This episode of the Demonic Compendium contains spoilers for the following games. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to a bolder new episode of the Demonic Compendium, the show where I discuss the mythology, design, and game history of your favorite Megami Tensei demons. You know, I was really stuck between a rock and a hard place on who I wanted to cover today. I mean, it is the release date of Shin Megami Tensei V Vengeance, and I don't want to take anything for granted. So please, forgive this rocky opening, because today, I'm talking about Oyamatsumi. And also Ubelluris, because I'm sentimental for him. Sorry for all the rock puns, but we all have our faults, right? That's right, folks, it's another 2-for-1 demon episode, so let's just tackle one at a time here and actually start with Ubelluris, who is sometimes referred to as Upellari. He was a colossal figure in Hittite and Hurrian mythology, which were civilizations in the regions that would eventually become Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. Much of the mythology from these regions seems to draw from ancient Mesopotamia, and some of their mythology seem to even cross over into ancient Greek myths. For example, the story of Ubelluris is that he was a colossal figure burdened with the responsibility of holding up the heavens and earth upon his shoulders, much like the Greek figure Atlas. Ubelluris was apparently a rather aloof giant and never really seemed all that fazed by the crushing weight upon him. Big mood, am I right? But here's where things get a little rocky for this figure. See, in translations of Hittite and Hurrian stone tablets depicting the Song of Ulukumi, Ubelluris held up the heavens and earth, and other gods tried to mess with him by placing a large stone giant on top of him as well, which, rather comedically, Ubelluris didn't even seem to notice. But do you see where that's weird? Because the stone figure was actually Ulukumi, not Ubelluris. Ubelluris' Compendium entry from Persona 3 Portable refers to him as a Hittite mountain god. He carries the western sky. The gods placed the stone giant Ulukumi on his shoulders to create the world, but he didn't notice the burden. I mean, okay, at least they kind of acknowledged it. Although I'm not sure how accurate that is, because supposedly the tale goes that the separation of heaven and earth happened long before Ulukumi was dropped onto Ubelluris' shoulder and was allowed to grow. But now we can take a look at the other side of the coin, Oyamatsumi, the patron deity of a kickstarted video game console where you can play such games as Towerfall, Garadon, The Amazing Frog, and Soulfjord. The Kickstarter raised a grand total of... Wait, this doesn't seem right. One second. Oyamatsumi is a mountain god in Japanese folklore. He was one of the many children of Izanagi and Izanami, and was often considered a deity of Mount Fuji who was responsible for sending down snow. He was also often seen as a god of rice fields and the tides that helped bring water to them, but he's generally viewed as a mountain god, and many shrines focusing on him are found on mountains. Oyamatsumi married his sister, Kaya no Hime, and had many children of their own, including Konohana Sakuya, Ashimazuchi, and Temazuchi. The latter two had a daughter of their own, Kushinada Hime, making her Oyamatsumi's granddaughter. But then Oyamatsumi's younger half-brother, Susanoo, ended up marrying her, so he's her husband and great-uncle. Look, I'm sorry, some of these Japanese deity relationships really just give me a headache. Let's just move on. Japanese mountain god, sometimes help with rice harvest and stuff, has nothing to do with the Oya. Oyamatsumi's Compendium entry from Shin Megami Tensei V refers to him as one of the Kunitsukamis in Japanese mythology. He is the grandfather of Susanoo's wife, Kushinada Hime. He is known as the god of the mountains, but is also considered to be the god of water and rice fields because he ruled over water sources and harvests. Design-wise, this is such a weird one to talk about with these two demons because I'd argue it's not really a good look for either of them. But let's get this out of the way first. Oyamatsumi is typically darker in color, or in a few older cases redder, while Ubelluris is lighter. Except in Persona 3, where for some reason they used the light Ubelluris model, but have unique artwork that's not only darker like we normally see for Oyamatsumi, but they power washed all the moss off him that's usually frequent on both of their designs, including the P3 model, so I don't know what they were going for with this artwork. Simply put, this is not a good design for Ubelluris, because as I already mentioned in the previous section, Ubelluris is not the big rock man. This would be a perfectly fine design for Ulukumi, who is described as a large stone monster, but it seems like there was a bit of a mix-up. Oyamatsumi is arguably a better pick. While certain descriptions of this minor god describe him as an old man, some tales do mention him taking the earthly form of a mountain, specifically Mount Oyama in the Kanagawa Prefecture. So while, yeah, it's not really a wrong design for the figure, I just think the franchise would have been better scrapping this design for both of these demons and reintroducing it as Ulakumi. But that's where we're at now, and I guess we're just gonna have to live with that. As far as game history goes, Ubelluris has a few small roles in the franchise, with his biggest one being in Digital Devil Saga 2. As Surf and the Embryon climb the Karma Society Tower, they're eventually ambushed by the Tribvana, with the leader of the trio, Tribvana Earth, transforming into the Stone Giant during the first and second boss battles. The human form of Ubelluris does come back later in the game, but transforms into a different demon that I won't get into right now because this is already a 2-for-1 video. Ubelluris is in Persona 1, where he was known simply as Golem in Revelations Persona because video game rock monster. Ubelluris went on to appear in Persona 3, Fess, and Portable as a member of the Hanged Man Arcana, but not in Reload, where his spot was taken by Mata, which actually brings me to something that I think is interesting. Because few things are more authentic to this show than me saying something that winds up becoming laughably outdated, I want to say this. If I were a betting man, I'd wager that we will never see Ubelluris in a new game ever again. Like, sure, in re-releases of games he's already in, like if we do get Digital Devil Saga HD, he'll probably stick around. But I think moving forward, as far as new Megaten titles are concerned, anytime we see this design, I think it's gonna be Oyamatsumi. Which brings us to that figure and his roles, which, when you look at them, you'll understand why I felt the need to talk about both demons today, because there's really not much. Oyamatsumi first appeared in 3D in the Raido duology, naturally as a palette swap of Ubelluris, but he doesn't really do anything in either game outside of appearing in a mini-boss fight against Arahabaki in Chapter 10 of Devil Summoner Raido Kuzunoha vs. the Soulless Army. He is a member of the Frost Order, likely in a direct reference to him living up in the mountains where it frequently snows. Speaking of Devil Summoner, Oyamatsumi is in Soul Hackers 2, but he doesn't really have any distinct roles as far as I could tell. He's just kinda sitting there, like a rock. However, Oyamatsumi does have a small role in Persona Q Shadow of the Labyrinth, where he appears as a member of the Strength Arcana. In the Elizabeth request, Time for a Trial, the group must fight Elizabeth yet again, this time with her using Oyamatsumi as her persona. Defeating her will unlock the Mountain God for fusion. Beyond that, it really wasn't until Shin Megami Tensei V when he got any kind of big role, and I mean that both figuratively and literally. Oyamatsumi appears early on in the game as the first punishing foe that the Nahobino will encounter. He's very large, but moves slow enough that he's easy enough to get around. Naturally, given his high level and power, it's not recommended that you fight him. Unless you're on New Game Plus, in which case, feel free to kick his butt. Oyamatsumi has a slightly larger role later in the story after the Nahobino meets up with Takemi Nakata, Okuninushi, and Sukuna Hikona. These members of the Kunitsukami will task the player with hunting down and defeating the giant Oyamatsumi and collecting his keystone in the side quest, The Search for Oyamatsumi. This quest just involves beating the punishing foe and reporting back to curry favor with the Japanese branch of Bethel. Oyamatsumi even makes a joke that the Nahobino should consider marrying into their family, which is funny because we know of the Nahobino's connection to Susanoo, and we already talked about that whole thing. After completing that quest, players may talk to Okuninushi and take the side quest, Clash with the Kunitsukami, where you fight all four of these beings in a single boss fight. In the original game, I always felt like there should have been more to this story, or that these characters should have had a larger appearance in the ending where you side with Bethel Japan, but you really don't see much of them after this. So why am I talking about Oyamatsumi now that Vengeance is out? Simple, because I always like to talk about a demon that I feel connects in a meaningful way to the game that's launching when my episodes come out. But at the same time, that means I miss out on everything in the new game related to that demon outside of the rare instances where Atlus graciously gives me an advanced copy. which is why I definitely didn't want to cover Lilith or some other giant figure in the new story today. I picked Oyamatsumi because I felt he was a strong enough figure in SMT5 to justify him being my pick for this video, but presumably isn't going to have a large enough role in Vengeance that I worry I'm missing anything too extraordinary. However, I can say that because Oyamatsumi is the father of Vengeance's main new DLC demon, Konohana Sakuya, I do anticipate some sort of interesting connection between the two. At the very least, I can say that he appears in the Nahobina's party alongside his daughter in her unique trailer for the game. So maybe the two of them will get a unique conversation or something. I don't know, let me know in the comments if they did or not. Also, on that subject, why didn't Oyamatsumi have a unique conversation with his sister wife? They were both in that game together. That feels like a missed opportunity. The only time Ubelluris and Oyamatsumi have ever appeared together was in the MMO title Shin Megami Tensei Imagine, much like when I covered Chatterskull and Utai Gaikotsu. However, the two rock monsters had a much more distinct palette swap that made it easier to remember which was which. And there you have it, Oyamatsumi and Ubelluris, the stoic stone sentinels sung about on Syrian slabs and sacred supervisor of the summits. Did I leave out something you thought was important? Was I just plain wrong about something? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to let me know who you'd like to see me talk about in future episodes. That's going to do it for this episode of the Demonic Compendium, and I will see you next time. But be careful while you rest that a demon doesn't take over your body.